Mr. President, are we in quorum?
No. We are not.
Thank you. Mr. President.
Democratic Leader.
Now, President Trump has kept the government shut down for 34 days, and the pain inflicted on the American people and its government is getting deeper and deeper every day. Our economy is suffering. First quarter GDP is in the tank. Consumer confidence is falling. Our national security is suffering. FBI agents attest that criminal and anti-terrorist investigations are severely constrained. Border Patrol, TSA, and hundreds of thousands of Homeland Security personnel are working under limitations. Yesterday, now, these people are all part of our security. President Trump keeps saying we need the wall for security. Most people disagree with that. But even if you didn't, it's going to be not built for years. Our security is suffering today because of the Trump shutdown. It's so bad, listen to this. 5 former DHS secretaries wrote a letter to President Trump urging him to end the shutdown without the wall, including his former chief of staff, John Kelly, a loyal soldier if there ever was one. But Kelly knew, and they all knew, that this shutting down the government for the president's wall, which most Americans don't believe we should build, is wrong. The president's former chief of staff is telling President Trump that his position on the shutdown is wrong, that his position on the shutdown is a threat to national security. I would argue far more than not building a huge, ineffective wall. Yesterday, a joint statement from the air traffic controllers, pilots, and flight attendants union issued a dire warning. In our risk-averse industry, we cannot even calculate the risk currently at play, nor predict the point at which the system will break. Mr. Donald Trump, President, you care about security? You would open the government now. You're the only one standing in the way. Because we know most of our Republican colleagues want the government opened up. They are, in a positive way, loyal to you, in a negative way, afraid to buck you. But they all know it. Everyone knows it. And of course, 800,000 federal workers are on the cusp of missing their second paycheck, a month's share of pay. Some require the assistance of food banks to get by. That is so disheartening. Hard-working people who just want to help their families have a decent life have to go to a food bank. They did nothing wrong. President Trump is using them as hostages. And here is how callous this administration is. When asked about the fact this morning, Commerce Secretary Wilbur Ross, a billionaire, said, quote, "I know they are," he's talking about federal workers, "I know they are going to food banks, and I don't really understand why." His quote exactly is, "I know they are, and I don't really quite understand why." He was arguing that it's easy for furloughed workers to get a loan. Those comments are appalling and reveal the administration's callous indifference towards the federal workers it is treating as pawns. Secretary Ross's comments are the 21st century equivalent of let them eat cake. Many of these federal employees live paycheck to paycheck. Secretary Ross, they just can't call their stockbroker and ask them to sell some of their shares. They need that paycheck. So we need to end this shutdown now. There's only one way to do it. This afternoon, for the first time since President Trump shut down the government in December, the Senate will have a chance to vote on a bill that reopens the government. Now, Leader McConnell says that President Trump's bill is the only way to reopen the government. Bull. He claims that our bill won't pass because President Trump won't sign it. Has he ever heard of a veto override? Has he ever heard of Article 1? But the bill that President Trump has put together can't pass the House and can't pass the Senate. So it has no chance of passing. So for Leader McConnell to say that the only bill that has a chance of opening up the government is President Trump's bill, where he puts in a $5.7 billion wall, undoes much of the asylum provisions, and is broadly unpopular, is false. It's just wrong. The two bills that are on the floor are not equivalent votes. My friends on the other side and some in the media who are being lazy called the two votes dueling proposals, as if there's one Republican proposal, one Democratic proposal, and they're sort of equal. It's just not true. The president's plan demands 100% of what the president wants, $5.7 billion for a border wall, plus radical new changes to our asylum system before reopening the government. For the Republican leader to call this a compromise is laughable. No Democratic sign-off. Not from me, not from Senator Durbin, not from any other Democrat. It's a harshly partisan proposal that equally codifies the president's position that government funding is a bargaining chip, that essentially codifies. It's a harshly partisan proposal that essentially codifies the president's position that government funding is a bargaining chip. A vote for the president's plan is an endorsement of government by extortion. If we let him do it today, he'll do it tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow. The whole structure of our government will change, and the chaos that we now see will be magnified. Even some of my Republican friends have admitted the president's plan's not a serious offer. A few days ago, my friend from Oklahoma called it, quote, a straw man proposal, unquote. I think that says it all. The president's plan is a straw man, not a serious offer, merely a way to save face. The second vote is the opposite. It demands nothing before we reopen the government. Nothing. No partisan demands. Not things we want or we'll shut down the government. We don't do that. Only Trump does that, and our Republican colleagues go along. Our proposal allows us to open up the government and then after government's open, settle our differences over border security. I know it's not partisan because every single Republican supported the same basic idea just 1 month ago when we voted on it. And when President Trump changed his mind and said no, everyone sort of did a 180-degree reversal, including my friend, the Republican leader. He knows it. So the two votes are not the same. They are not flip sides of the same coin. The first vote is harshly partisan and one-sided. The second vote seeks to be down the middle and reopen government and has received overwhelming support from both sides before President Trump said he wouldn't do it. Calling the two votes equivalent is not an attempt just to simplify, but to mislead. Nonetheless, in a few hours, we'll take these two votes. The Senate will have a chance to say no to the president's hostage-taking, and then the Senate will have a chance to send a clear message that Congress is ready to reopen the government. To my Republican colleagues, even if you're for the wall, all of those who have said, I may be for the wall, but I want to keep the government open, have a chance to do it on the second vote. Let's see how they vote. Throughout this debacle, I have not heard one good reason why 800,000 federal employees must be held hostage for us to discuss border security. Democrats are happy to discuss border security under regular order with the government open. We support stronger border security. President Trump believes the best way to do that is an expensive and ineffective wall. We disagree sharply over that, but there's no reason we can't negotiate and figure it out. What we cannot allow is the president to hijack our government and hold it hostage every time we disagree over policy, which he will do if he wins this time. The votes this afternoon are about more than just a shutdown. They're about how we govern in a democracy. We're allowed to come here and disagree over policy. In fact, our system of government was designed to allow for progress despite our large and sometimes raucous differences. But when one side, in this case the president, throws a temper tantrum and uses the basic functioning of our government as leverage in a policy argument, our system of government breaks down. If every president decided to shut down the government when they didn't get a policy from Congress, America would careen from crisis to crisis, an endless spiral of gridlock and dysfunction. So the votes this afternoon are not about border security. These votes are about ending a manufactured crisis, a self-inflicted wound that is bleeding our country out a little more each day. And I hope I pray the Senate rises to the occasion. I yield the floor.